Hello, welcome class. Professor Gomez here. And in this short video or audio podcast, I'm gonna give a small introduction about the border region facts. So follow me. Back in 1848, after the war between the US and Mexico, both sides signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo to bring the conflict to an end. In Article 5 of that treaty, they drew the line that basically became the border we know today. Right now, the US Mexican border stretches for about 2,000 miles from San Diego, right next to the city of Tijuana, all the way to Brownsville in Texas, across from Matamoros. That is the city in the Mexican state of Tamaulipas. It was a major loss for Mexico. Around 55 of its territory was gone. Meanwhile, the US expanded westward and gained what are now the states of California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Two other important articles to mention are Article 8 and 9. They deal with civic and citizenship rights of Mexicanos in the areas that the US took over. Article 8 allowed these residents to choose whether to stay or move to Mexico. It promised also to protect their property, no matter what choice they made. They had 1 year to decide if they wanted to keep their Mexican citizenship. If they didn't decide, they would automatically become US citizens. The treaty also said that property owned by Mexicanos who did not live in the ceded area would be treated with respect, give them protections similar to those of US citizens, but later you will know that these two articles were completely violated. The treaty also said that property owned by Mexicanos who did not live in the ceded areas would be treated with respect, giving them protections similar to those of US citizens. However, these two articles were completely violated. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo not only reshaped the political boundaries between the US and Mexico, but also deeply violated the rights of territory of indigenous nations. To this day, indigenous groups continue to challenge the treaty in international courts and human rights forums, arguing that the rights under international law, particularly those established by instruments like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, have been and continue to be violated. These challenges highlight the ongoing colonial legacy of the treaty and remind us that the US Mexican border is not just a geopolitical division, but a site of indigenous resistance, memory, and survival. 6 years after the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the US came back to pressure to get more land from Mexico. The United States, under President Franklin Pierce, wanted to build a southern transcontinental railroad, one that would connect the southern states to the Pacific coast. But the land best suited for that railway lay south of the Gila River, in what was still Mexican territory. The negotiations to buy the land nearly led to another war, as many in Mexico viewed the sale as another bullying tactic from the US. Despite the tensions, but in the end, the agreement was signed, and the purchase settled the current southern border in 1854, known as the Gadsden Purchase. It finalized the southernmost stretch of the US Mexico border as we know it today. The border was marked with 276 obelisks. If you ever go to Playa de Tijuana, right at the border between San Diego and Tijuana, you will see one of those obelisks. Only in the early 1900s, parts of the border were made with barbed wires. And this barbed fence was not intended to prevent people from entering. It was installed to prevent at that time cattle from crossing into the US. The US was concerned that these cows carry infectious diseases known as cow fever ticks during that time. Even the tall border wall that we have, people easily jump over, go under it, you name it. These borders don't really do the job. It just gives a false sense of security. People say that for every tall wall, there's a tall ladder to get over it. Right now, the border wall gets crossed all the time. Just look at what happened during the Biden administration. Hundreds of thousands of migrants seeking asylum easily jump over the fence. Our southern border, it is shaped by two big natural barriers. We have the Rio Grande, which separates Texas from Mexico, and the harsh Sonora Desert that runs through parts of Arizona and California. In some areas, the US takes advantage of the natural landscape, particularly along a big stretch of Rio Grande. Unfortunately, crossing these deserts has become dangerous for migrants. Many lives are lost because of the freezing cold in the winter and the extreme heat in the summer, leading to tragic death from dehydration. According to the IOM, which is the International Organization for Migration, they documented close to 700 deaths and disappearances of migrants on the US Mexican border in 2022, making it the deadliest land route for migrants worldwide on record. In June of 2022, I don't know if you remember, 48 people smuggled over the border were found all dead inside of a tractor trailer. That was in San Antonio, Texas. That was a really tragic incident. The border region is experiencing significant growth, largely driven by job opportunities in cities such as Tijuana and San Diego, as well as Mexicali and Calexico, and Juarez and El Paso. These pairs of cities are often known as twin cities due to their close economic ties and mutual interdependence. The stretch spans about 100 miles in both sides of the border and is home to nearly 20 million people, perhaps a little bit more. Many historians even describe this border corridor as a country of its own, deeply connected yet governed by two different nations. Every day, around half a million people cross from Mexico into the US, reflecting the strong interconnected economies on both sides. One clear example is the San Isidro port of entry, which links Tijuana to San Diego. It is the busiest land border crossing in the world, with about 100,000 people heading north daily. Based on these dynamics, both nations have established national laws through their respective national agencies to address problems like crime, free trade, education, and also the environment. Something that here in San Diego have a lot of problems with the Tijuana River spilling all the sewer into the ocean. The concept of national integration was established in 1985. So it has been about 40 years since both nations have been collaborating to find solutions in areas such as the environment, trade, education, health, and other essential needs. When we talk about twin cities like Tijuana and San Diego, it is important to remember that the United States doesn't have an open border policy. This is not like the European Union, where crossing from Sweden to Denmark, for example, is really easy. Here, national power is tied to territorial control And that's where laws come in. Many of those laws are controversial, and that's a part of why crossing the border from Tijuana into the US can take so long, sometimes up to 3 hours. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the US government has spent over $400 billion on immigration enforcement, building more fences, hiring more border agents, and expanding infrastructure to secure the border. I cannot help but think back to the COVID-19 pandemic when the border was completely closed under a policy called Title 42. We'll talk more about that in later chapters of this class, but after President Biden ended Title 42, we saw a massive influx of migrants at the border in 2022, which sparked national concern. That moment became a turning point, and for many voters, it shaped the outcome of this current election. There was a strong perception that the country was being overwhelmed or invaded, and that drove political momentum in a particular direction. That is why our current president was running a campaign on mass deportation, which he's trying to implement as we're talking right now. If we look back over the past 50 years, we can see that every president, Republican or Democrat, has used the border to promote their political campaigns. Bill Clinton heavily militarized the border and added hundreds of miles of walls. Barack Obama was labeled as the deporter in chief. It's important to acknowledge that our immigration system is facing significant challenges. Most of us we can agree that it's broken. The last major comprehensive immigration reform was enacted back in 1986 during Reagan's administration. This means we've been operating for over 40 years without meaningful updates, and many people and families have been affected by this prolonged uncertainty. Building a wall to keep people out doesn't just affect humans, it can seriously disrupt the environment. Along the border, fencing has significantly impacted local ecosystems. For example, endangered species like the Mexican gray wolf and jaguars have been heavily impacted, especially in Arizona. Closer to home, in the desert region near Jacumba, California, deer and bighorn sheep once shared a natural habitat across the border before 1994. Now, because of the barriers, their movement is restricted, which has caused serious problems for their survival. But it's not just about animals on land. The border region also faces major pollution problems. Tons of untreated sewage flow through a river that starts in Mexico, runs through California, and eventually spills into the Pacific Ocean. And I'm talking about right here between San Diego and Tijuana. Public health researchers at San Diego State and other local universities have found that this water is fully contaminated with arsenic, viruses, bacteria, and parasites. So I can't help but feel for the surfers, and not just them, but also the seals, the marine life, and the beautiful coastal ecosystem we're supposed to protect. Since the 1960s, US companies have been setting up factories along the Mexican side of the border to take advantage of free trade zones. These companies are called maquiladoras, and over time, this has helped build one of the strongest economic partnerships in the world. In fact, by 2023, trade between the US and Mexico hit over 800 billion in goods. Mexico even became the number one trading partner of the US, passing China and Canada. You've seen it on the news. Early 2025, things took a turn. President Trump started a new trade war by placing a 25% tariff on all Mexican imports, saying it was about stopping illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum fired back, calling the move unfair and putting tariff on U.S. goods in response. Negotiations continue to go on, but it really shows that even close economic partners can clash quickly when politics gets in the way. This border region has always been shaped by powerful push and pull factor forces that drive migration and trade. On one hand, people are pushed out of their countries by economic hardship, violence, and environmental pressures. On the other hand, they are pulled toward the United States by opportunities, safety, and also family connections. This has been the reality for over 100 years. Migrants come because there's a lot of work here. And let's be honest, they are the ones picking up our lettuce, our tomatoes, doing the labor that many people in the US simply don't want to do. But these dynamics also lead to real humanitarian crises at the border. Migrants often face dangerous journeys, exploitation by coyotes, and extreme conditions that threaten their life. Migration once again complicates the border, leading to intricate interactions that continues to shape our border region. The U.S. blames Mexico for not doing enough to assist with migrants crossing the border. Additionally, the drug trade is linked to smugglers who use migrants as bait. These problems exist alongside the strong economic and social connections that define life in the border area. After 9/11, border security got a lot tighter, not just at the border itself, but also at the international airports. If you ever gone through TSA screening, you've seen the legacy of that shift. In response to growing concerns, the U.S. introduced several programs and visa options over the last decade to make legal border crossing faster and more efficient. Visas like Sentry and Ready Lanes were created for pre-approved low-risk travelers, and they are very helpful because it reduced wait times significantly. Even though this region is divided by two nations, two languages, and two histories, it is still one of the most dynamic and culturally rich spaces in the world. It is a place where economics intersect, where cultures blend, and where societies are constantly adapting. It is both a physical and symbolic boundary, a space of vibrant exchange, transformation, and sometimes tension. But the creativity and resilience of the people here are incredible. Take the CVX terminal, for example, privately built binational bridge connecting San Diego directly to the Tijuana International Airport. It's a great example of innovation driven by the needs of a border community. The people who live in this border corridor have developed a unique identity. They are known as fronterizos. Most are bilingual in Spanish and English. Many cross the border every single day. For them, crossing into the US is just a regular, though often inconvenient part of life. They call going to el otro lado, means the other side. I always find that really beautiful and sometimes weird. However, both sides of the border have shaped and shared a space that truly unique. A space that exists in between two systems, two worlds, and yet belong fully to both. I hope you enjoy learning these insights, and I can't wait to catch up with you in the next episode of this class. Take care.